and welcome to another episode of FooBar. Today we are going to talk about EVENTBRIDGE, what it is, and how to get started with it with SAM. EVENTBRIDGE was launched 2 years ago in July 2019. I made a video as soon as it came out, and then I made a couple more videos of new features it got. But I think that video needs a refresher because it has developed and people started using it a lot for serverless applications. It has become one of those services that big organizations are taking into and using for developing their serverless applications. In combination with step functions, now you can do quite a lot of decoupling of your microservices and your serverless applications. I talk a lot about step functions. I have many videos about step functions, but I have very little information about EVENTBRIDGE. So today we are solving that. So the first question you might be wondering is what is EVENTBRIDGE? Well, EVENTBRIDGE is one of those AWS managed services for messaging. It connects many to many, so many Lambda functions to many queues or whatever, many to many, and we will go and talk a little bit more what it connects. And that many to many allows you to connect multiple services, microservices, external services together. Now you might be wondering why I want something many to many. It's quite easy to use an API. I have a consumer and a producer. I just send messages like API calls and they work. Yeah, that's good, but when you have one-on-one, it's okay. What happens when you have multiple producers that are sending events to multiple consumers, and what happens when those consumers want to send a callback and things are getting complicated like this, when everybody is coupled to everybody and you change one and you need to go into the code of multiple and change it. So that's why we need an event router, event bus, or whatever. Sits in the middle and routes the messages from the producers to the consumers. And neither the producers or the consumers are aware of the other's existence. So if we replace one, then the other doesn't care. The only important thing in this case is that both parties agree on what is the message types or what is inside the messages or the events. So, EVENTBRIDGE is a managed service. It's totally serverless. That means that it scales automatically, it's highly available, you pay as much as you use, and you don't have to manage infrastructure. And EVENTBRIDGE is a fully managed service. It's a serverless service. And that means that it scales automatically, you don't have to manage infrastructure, it's highly available, and you pay as much as you use. EVENTBRIDGE does not only allows you to connect multiple AWS services or microservices or applications you build within one AWS account, but it allows you to connect to other AWS accounts, other regions, other providers, like SaaS partners. So, for example, you can connect to Auth0, Datadog, Salesforce. They have native connections with EVENTBRIDGE. If you want to know the list of all the connections, I'll leave you a link in the description box so you can check them out, but there is many. And also, you can connect to third-party places or APIs or whatever through the API destinations. I will cover that in a future video, so stay tuned for that. It might come the week after this one is released, so stay tuned for that. So we talk a little bit on how EVENTBRIDGE works. It sits in the middle between the consumers and the producers. It allows the producers to send messages to the consumers. Everything is loosely coupled. The magic of EVENTBRIDGE is that all the events that are passing in this bus, they need to be packaged in a way. So basically we call that these messages has an envelope metadata. And this envelope metadata is something that EVENTBRIDGE understands and can use to route the messages. So here we have an example of a message that is an event that is sent inside EVENTBRIDGE. And you can see that the top part is the envelope metadata, and that's something that either EVENTBRIDGE will populate or you in your application can populate. Then we have the payload, that is the data that you want to really send in your event. So that's something that's totally up to you. But there's also some parameters that you have control on. So for example, the source. The detail type, those are things that you can define. You can say from which application, if it's a custom application, like we are going to build in the demo, or if it's an AWS service, it will say S3 or something like that. And then the detail type, you can also put more information there. So you can say one more level of description. So if you have, I don't know, a paying system, you can talk about the different applications within that system or something like that. But you can define those things. So now the next question that you might have is like how EventBridge knows how to send the messages from those producers to those consumers with this package. Well, EventBridge works with rules. So within EventBridge, you will define the different rules, and then when an event comes in, then it will go and get it analyzed through a rule. It can apply to one rule or multiple rules, and then if it's matching that rule, it will go to the different targets. There can be multiple targets per individual rules, up to 5 targets nowadays, so you can send all the information to the right place. So that's pretty neat. How you can use that rule system with EventBridge. So you have multiple rules, and they can say, well, some rules can be let's match the detail and the source. Others can be all the S3 events are going here. Others, like whatever, it's very customizable, and you can have up to 300 rules per event bus. So what? Event bus? You just added a new concept there. Well, we have EventBridge, that is an event bus service, and inside EventBridge you can have multiple event buses. By default, there is the default event bus, and that's the one that AWS services will send their messages. So most of AWS services will send messages without you doing much, or just by configuring something directly to EventBridge. So it will happen inside this bus. Then we have the partner event buses, and for example, if you're using Auth0 or Datadog or other SaaS providers, will be using their own independent bus. And these buses are kind of independent on each other, so we will talk a little bit about how many buses you should have in a moment. And then finally, we have the custom event buses, and these are the buses that you define. You can either define them from your applications for your needs, or as I will say, you can use the default event bus if you don't have a very complex application and you don't need your own particular bus. So you can send your application events through the default bus. So how many buses we need? That's a great question. You can have as many as you need. I imagine there is a limit, but I think the most important thing here is that you avoid routing inside the event buses. So if you have applications that need to talk to each other, don't put them in different buses. That will make a mess. So keep everything in the same bus. If you have applications that are totally independent, then you can have them in different custom buses, and that will be totally fine. So these are good practices on working with the buses. You can also work with buses that are in different accounts. So you can have a custom bus that is handling the traffic that is coming from or going to another account, or different regions. So that's something you can also do with the event bus. And finally, the question might also come in how we define the rules. Who owns the rules? I think it's a good kind of strategy if you are using one custom bus or the default bus, that the rules belong to the consumer. So it's kind of easier to handle. So you will see it in the example that we are going to do now. We will have one producer that will be sending the events, and then the different consumer services will have the definition for the rules within that service. So then it's kind of easier to find, and it's more decoupled as well. If not, then you will have the definition of the consumer inside the producer code. So you start adding coupling, and you get what I mean. So now that we went through the basics of EventBridge, what it is, what it does, and all that, I want to show you how you can build this with AWS SAM. In the first video I did, there in 2009. I did exactly the same with serverless framework, so you can go and check it out. And if you're wondering what is the difference between EventBridge, SQS, SNS, Kinesis, and all those services, I already made a video about that some time ago, so go and check it out. So now we are ready to get started. And you have been watching this content for a while and have not liked that button yet. Hit that like button. I'm watching you. I'm watching you. I'm watching you. And if you're not subscribed, subscribe. Yeah, let's continue. So what we are going to build in this demo? Imagine you're a delivery company like Wolt, or if you're in Nordics, or Uber Eats, or I don't know, Rappi if you're in Latin America, whatever. And people will order food from your app. And then you need to connect to all these different restaurants. Okay, you need to take the order and then send that order to restaurants so they can prepare the food and then they can deliver it. Well, you will deliver it. So this needs to be some kind of callback system, back and forth and messaging. And this can get very complicated if you are using APIs, because things are asynchronous. Things are not like you send a message and it will come the response right away, you know? So here we are going to use an event bus. We are going to build an application using a SAM. And for this, I'm going to use free SAM projects simulating the free parts of our application. We have the producer, that will be the application that is taking in the orders from the customers and sending these messages to the different restaurants. And then we will have two restaurants, so two consumers in this case, that are kind of listening to the rules. They have rules attached into EventBridge, and there are trigger Lambda functions when those rules get triggered. What we are going to implement today, it can be improved, because if you have multiple restaurants, it becomes a mess. I will show you how you can improve it in the following video when we talk about API destinations. But I think this is a great example that can work for many use cases that you might have in your organization. So we'll have free projects, free SAM projects, one for the order manager, one for the restaurant that I call Pizza Hut, very original, and another one for the restaurant called Thailand. So let's go to the code. So before starting out with the code, you need to have an AWS account. You need to have some CLI installed. I think that's it. Configuring your computer. You can get the code from the link I leave you in the description box. So as always, I will be starting with an empty project, creating a folder called SAM EventBridge, and there I will put my free projects. And the first part of this video is basically setting up everything. So I will create 3 directories, and inside each of the directories, I will create a template YAML that is empty, a handled JS that is empty, and I will initialize the node projects for each of them. So I will fast forward until we have that set up, because me creating files and running commands in the screen that are not very hard, it's boring. So now we are back, and this is the result. We have 3 folders, 3 directories, one for the order manager, one for Pizza Hut, and one for Thailand, 2 restaurants, 1 producer, 2 consumers. And the 3 directories are the same. We have, each of them has a handler JS that is empty, a template YAML that is empty, and a package JSON that has the bare bones for initializing each of the node projects. So we are going to start working. First, we are going to start with the restaurants. We are creating the bare bone infrastructure, and that means I'm going to create a function for each of the restaurants with no trigger or anything. So I will create the function in both restaurants, and I will create a handler inside the restaurant that basically prints in console an order has been received. And in here, if you were doing this in real life, you can either call the API of the restaurant or do something else, invoke something, I don't know. So this is what we are doing here. So I will fast forward until we arrive to the order manager that is a little bit more interesting. So now we jump into the order manager, and there I will also define one function that is the put order function. So that's the function I'm defining. And there you will see that it has a trigger. It's an API trigger by a post HTTP event with the path order. So that's good. We can trigger this, and then when we trigger this will put an event in EventBridge, and this EventBridge will get the rules analyzed and it will send it to the right restaurant. So that's good. We will go and also add a little bit code in our handler, so we have something to start with, and I will basically put a print of the body because we want the body, and then we can deploy this thing. I will deploy this right away so you see that everything is working. If you're following this, you don't need to deploy it right away. You can do whatever, you can deploy it later on once, but it's easier for me to deploy it now, and then it's ready to start working. So the order details, I want them to include the restaurant name, the order, basically what we are ordering, pizza, pad thai, whatever, the customer name, and then the amount of items, so 2 pad thais or something like that. This doesn't make much sense, but this is what it's going to come in the order details. So I will prepare my HTTP request with this body so I know that everything is working. So I will do SAM deploy -- guided, go through the configuration, deploy it, and then I will be testing it out. So when we are ready, we just go to our favorite HTTP client for testing. I'm using this Thunder client that is inside Visual Studio Code, and I'm putting the URL, I'm putting the message post, I'm putting the body, that is the restaurant name, the order, the customer name, and the amount that I mentioned 2 seconds ago, and I'm sending the request, and that's basically not doing anything because it's not connected to anything, but it's working. Good. Now, like 2 minutes of demo for setting. I need to show you those things. Sorry about that. So now we can move on to sending an event through that order manager. So the first part we want to do is to put an event inside EventBridge. So we will first give permissions for these Lambda functions to put an event in the custom bus of EventBridge. And again, I repeat this all the time. All the different AWS services are born without permissions. We always need to give them permissions to do things. And in this case, is to put an event. So every time you're using the AWS SDK, you need to give permissions for that particular operations you're doing. Now that we are out of the way with the permissions, we are ready to start using that API, and we can create a new method that will be the one putting the events in EventBridge. And you will see, as always, it's very, very simple to use the AWS SDK. It's very straightforward. I'm going to create a new method where I'm passing these order details, the restaurant name, the order, the customer name, and the amount into EventBridge. So this put event in EventBridge, what it will have is we are going to create this detail that is the payload of the event that will have all these order details, and then I will be sending an event, and I can modify a little bit the envelope of the event. You can see there the detail, that's the payload of the event, and then we have the detail type, that's part of the envelope, and I'm saying that this is the order, this is an order, and the source is a custom.order manager. So this is a custom application. You don't need to put custom, you can put whatever you want. I like to put custom, so I know some are AWS, some are mine. And then we send that to EventBridge. And that's kind of it. Now we can basically deploy this again and test it. But if we deploy it now, nobody is kind of listening to this event, so nothing will happen. So the next thing we need to do is to have somebody listening to this event. And for that, we are going to create a rule. And we will create rules in 2 different ways, because this is a SAM video. I want to show you the CloudFormation way, and I want to show you the native SAM way of doing things. So the first way I want to show you is the more CloudFormation way, where you have to define more things. So we will use the example in the Pizza Hut. We are going to the template YAML, and we are going to add the rule for the EventBridge. So here we are going to define the rule for this consumer inside the consumer project. So it's tied together and it's not tied to the producer. So here I will create an EventBridge rule. And you can see there that there is a lot of information. There is the description, the event pattern. So this is what the rule needs to match to. We have the source, and here the source needs to match exactly the same as the custom order manager. That is the source that we define in the handler.js, in the producer. So things need to match. And then we have the detail type. Also, we are checking against that, so we need to have exactly the same. And the restaurant name, that will be inside the detail. There will be an attribute called restaurant name, so it needs to match exactly. This event pattern is a quite complex one. There is 3, but you can have it more complex. There is a lot of things you can do with those rules, but there is 3 matches that we need to do. We can have even 1. It's like if the source is this, do that. Like, you don't need to make it too complex. But this is a cool thing. You can go inside the payload. You can see the different parts of the envelope. You can do quite a lot of things. And even, I didn't show it here, but it's in the demo code. You will see that there is a Lambda function. When nothing matches the rule, you can also capture that. And that's pretty cool. So go and check the GitHub code that has that demo. And then we have the target definition, and that is what is going to get triggered with the target, in this case, this Lambda function, the Pizza Hut function. But again, all things in AWS are born without permissions, so we need to give permissions to EventBridge to invoke the Lambda function. So we are going to do that, and we are going to give the permissions to invoke a Lambda function. We have to say who and what permissions. So yeah, so that's what we are doing here. And now we can deploy. Now we can test the producer sending an event to EventBridge, and then EventBridge matching the rule and sending it to the right target. So I will fast forward until we are deployed, because we need to deploy the 2 projects, the producer and the consumer, that is this Pizza Hut. So now we are back in our HTTP client. I have exactly the same request because we have created the body that has the restaurant name Pizza Hut, so everything is good. So now I can send this request, and I can also open in the side the logs for the Pizza Hut Lambda to see if it's getting triggered. I will open that in the side using the Serverless console. That is my favorite plugin for Serverless in Visual Studio Code. So I will just configure everything, and we can go and see it in action. So this is just finding that function and showing me the logs. There is nothing in the log group, so that's good because we have not executed that yet. So now we have side by side the request, we send it, and then as soon as I get the response, we can refresh the logs, and we see that an order has arrived, and we can see that everything matches whatever we send in the body. So that sounds really good. Now we will do exactly the same, but using the SAM notation for EventBridge. This makes things simpler, so this is my preferred way. I will do it in the Thailand example, so you have it there, and you can see that instead of adding the rule and the invocation permission, we add just an event source to the Lambda function. And then SAM knows how to create all those other things. So we add an event trigger to this Lambda function with the type of CloudWatch event. And then again, we put the pattern on which this rule needs to match. The pattern is a very similar pattern that the one we did in the Pizza Hut. We need to match the source, that is the custom order manager. We send it in the handler, the detail type, that is the order, and then the restaurant name, that in this case is Thailand. So this is a way simpler kind of way of defining this. If you have a Lambda function, you can attach this SAM way of handling this. So I really like it. And basically now we can deploy this service and test it again. So let's fast forward until everything is deployed. The Thailand needs to get deployed, and we can go and test it. Again, we will add another service using the Serverless console, and we will add the Thailand restaurant and all those things, and we can see the logs. Also, we need to modify a little bit our existing request because it was sending it to the restaurant Pizza Hut before. So now I modify it to send it to Thailand, and we are also ordering pad Thai. If not, they will say, what the hell? So now we can see the order went okay, and pad Thai got the event. Yes. So if you want to see what is going on in EventBridge, now we can go to the AWS console and see it. So if you go to your management console and you look for EventBridge, you will find it. And there you will see all the different pieces that I mentioned. You can see your event buses. I have one that is the default one and the custom event bus. So we have that one. The default you will have, the custom event bus, I created it for testing. So that's good. Then we have the rules. And the rules there are independent for each bus, so you need to pick the bus and then you can see the rules. And you can see that there's like 15 in here. I was just a little confused because there was no moving forward at the end of the page. The pagination was on top, so I was like, why I cannot find all my rules? I don't come that often to the UI. So I find the rules here that we define, so you can filter and find the rules. So there is the Pizza Hut and the Thailand, so you can open the rules and you can see the configuration in each of the rules, how they're defined and all that. You can see the event pattern that we were defining with the rules. You can see the targets, which Lambda in this case get triggered, but they can be anything can be a target. So, and you can edit them, add more targets and things like that. I will not recommend you to go manually and edit this. This is infrastructure as code. You want to keep it in the code. So I show you how to do this with SAM. I show you how to do this with CloudFormation. Do you want to see it with CDK? Let me know in the comments. So that's everything for today. Today you learn about EventBridge, you learn about its integration with SAM, and in the following video I want to talk about EventBridge with API destinations that I think is a powerful match for all those things that are not within AWS or in our shared SaaS providers, and you don't want to just have a Lambda function running things just to call an API. So it will solve a lot of problems. So tune in for that, and I see you in the next episode of FooBar.